The ship that carried Marcus Cole through the endless dark of space was small and old. It shook and groaned as it moved between the stars. Marcus sat alone in the passenger hold, his hands resting on his knees, his eyes fixed on the metal floor beneath his boots. He was 24 years old. He had been a lieutenant in the Terran Defense Force for only 8 months. He had never seen real combat. He had never traveled beyond the Sol system before this mission. And now, he was being sent to stand before the most powerful beings in the known galaxy. The orders had come 3 weeks ago. The Galactic Empress had called a grand convocation. Representatives from all 12 galactic empires would attend. And for the first time in 300 cycles, a human had been invited. No, not invited, summoned. Marcus remembered the face of Admiral Chun when she gave him the mission briefing. She had looked tired, old, afraid. They asked for someone young, she had said. Someone low-ranking. Someone we could afford to lose. Marcus had understood. He was expendable. If the aliens decided to make an example of humanity, they would kill him. Earth would protest, but Earth was weak. Earth had no real power among the stars. The 12 empires could burn every human colony to ash, and there was nothing anyone could do to stop them. Why me? Marcus had asked. Admiral Chun had not answered for a long time. Then she had reached across her desk and touched the insignia on his chest. Because you still believe in what this means, she had said. And maybe that matters. Maybe it doesn't. But it's all we have to send. The insignia was simple. It showed Earth held in 2 human hands, surrounded by stars. Below the image were 3 words written in every known galactic language. We remember everyone. Every Terran soldier wore this patch. It was given to them on the day they completed their training. It was the symbol of what humanity had become after first contact. A species that had learned it was small and weak and alone in a universe full of predators. A species that had chosen to hold onto each other instead of falling apart. Marcus touched the patch now as the ship began to slow. Through the small window, he could see the Velanti homeworld growing larger. It was beautiful in a terrible way. The planet glowed with soft purple light. Great rings of ice and crystal circled it like a crown. Hundreds of warships floated in orbit, their weapons pointed at the stars. 17 fleets from 17 different species. All of them watching. All of them waiting. The ship landed in a docking bay larger than most Terran cities. Armed guards met Marcus at the door. They were Velanti soldiers, tall and thin, with skin like polished silver and 4 eyes that never blinked. They did not speak to him. They simply gestured for him to follow. Marcus walked through corridors of crystal and light. He passed delegates from species he had only read about in training manuals. The Kavari hunters with their armored bodies and clicking mandibles. The Servani collective floating in their liquid spheres. The Drathani warlords covered in scars and carrying weapons even to a peace summit. All of them looked at Marcus as he passed. Some with curiosity. Some with disgust. Some with something that might have been pity. He was so small compared to them. So fragile. So obviously weak. The throne chamber was at the heart of the palace. Marcus had seen images of it in the briefing files, but the images had not prepared him for the reality. The room was vast beyond understanding. The ceiling disappeared into darkness far above. The walls were made of living crystal that pulsed with soft light. And at the center of it all, floating above a platform of pure energy, was the throne of the Galactic Empress. Cyrillith had ruled her empire for 6,000 years. She had watched civilizations rise and fall like waves upon a shore. She had ordered the destruction of worlds and the extinction of species. She was ancient and terrible and beautiful in the way a dying star is beautiful. When Marcus entered the chamber, she was already watching him. He walked alone across the floor. His footsteps echoed in the silence. Every delegate in the chamber had turned to look at him. Thousands of alien eyes, studying him like scientists might study a specimen. He stopped at the base of the throne platform. Protocol said he should kneel. Every other delegate had knelt when they approached the Empress. Marcus did not kneel. A murmur ran through the crowd. The Volanthi guards raised their weapons slightly, but the Empress simply smiled. "The human child has courage," she said. Her voice was like music and thunder mixed together. It came from everywhere at once, translated by devices implanted in every delegate's mind. Or perhaps he is simply too foolish to know fear. "I know fear, Empress," Marcus said. His voice was steady, though his heart was pounding. "I simply choose not to let it control me." The Empress descended from her throne. She moved without walking, floating down like a leaf falling from a tree. When she stood before Marcus, she was nearly twice his height. Her 4 eyes studied him with ancient curiosity. "You wear markings upon your chest," she observed. "Explain them." Marcus looked down at his insignia. Such a simple thing. A patch of fabric with an image and a few words. But in that moment, it felt like the heaviest thing he had ever carried. "This is the symbol of the Terran Defense Force," he said. "Every human soldier wears it." "I know what it is," the Empress said. "I asked you to explain it. Explain why you wear an image of your world held in hands. Explain why you carry those words. Explain what this small piece of cloth means to your small species." Marcus looked up at her. He looked past her, at the thousands of delegates watching him. He saw the Kethari hunters with their weapons ready. He saw the Drathani warlords with their scarred faces. He saw 100 species that could destroy humanity without effort, and he smiled. "You want to understand my insignia, Empress?" he asked. "I do not wish," she replied, her voice cold. "I require." Marcus took a breath. In that moment, he thought of Admiral Chum. He thought of his family back on Earth. He thought of every human who had ever lived and died among the stars. "Then let me tell you a story," he said. "Let me tell you what it means to be human." The chamber fell silent, and Marcus Cole, expendable and forgotten, began to speak. Before Marcus could begin his story, a sound cut through the silence of the chamber. It was a harsh sound, like metal scraping against stone. It was laughter. The laughter came from the Kethari delegation. They stood in a group near the front of the chamber, their armored bodies gleaming under the crystal lights. There were 12 of them, each one a hunter who had earned their place through blood and victory. And at their head stood Vorath. Vorath was old, even by Kethari standards. His body was covered in scars from 1,000 battles. One of his forearms was made of metal, a replacement for the one he had lost fighting a Drathani champion 2 centuries ago. His mandibles clicked together as he laughed, and his black eyes fixed on Marcus with pure contempt. "Why do we waste our time with this?" Vorath demanded. He pushed forward through the crowd, and other delegates moved quickly out of his way. No one wanted to stand too close to a Kethari hunter. "Why has the Empress summoned this prey creature to speak before us?" The Empress turned to look at Vorath. Her expression did not change, but something in the air grew colder. "You question my decisions, Hunter?" she asked. Vorath stopped walking. Even he knew better than to directly challenge a Volanthi Empress. But he did not back down. "I question why we give attention to this weak species," he said. "The Kethari have hunted across 10,000 worlds. We have killed kings and broken empires. We have mounted the heads of warriors in our halls of victory. And now we are asked to listen to a human child explain his clothing." He turned to face the crowd, spreading his forearms wide. "Humans are soft," he declared. "They have no natural weapons. No armor, no venom. They cannot see in darkness. They cannot survive in the cold of space. They die from wounds that would barely slow a Kethari youngling. They are prey, nothing more. Murmurs of agreement rippled through the chamber. Many of the delegates were nodding. The Drathni warlords beat their fists against their chests in approval. The Servani collective flickered with patterns that meant agreement in their strange language. Marcus stood still and said nothing. He let them talk. He let them laugh. He watched and waited. The Empress raised one elegant hand, and the chamber fell silent once more. "The hunter speaks truth," she said. She turned back to Marcus, and her 4 eyes glittered with cold amusement. "Your species is young, human. You have been among the stars for only a few centuries. You are fragile by every measure we know. Your bodies break easily. Your lifespans are short. You possess nothing that should allow you to survive in this galaxy." She paused, and something changed in her voice. The amusement faded, replaced by something harder to read. "And yet," she continued, "you have survived. Every attempt to conquer your species has failed. Every empire that has tried to break humanity has been broken instead. You should have been slaves centuries ago. You should have been extinct. But you are not." She stepped closer to Marcus, studying him like a puzzle she could not solve. "I have lived for 6,000 years," she said. "I have watched species rise and fall beyond counting. I have seen warriors who could tear planets apart with their bare hands. I have seen minds that could calculate the movements of galaxies. And I have never seen anything quite like humanity." She pointed at Vorath without looking at him. "The Cathari are the most feared hunters in the galaxy. They accept contracts to kill anyone, anywhere, for the right price. Their reputation is built on the certainty that once they accept a hunt, they never fail." Her lips curved into a thin smile. "And yet the Cathari have a standing order known only to their highest leaders, that they will never accept a contract against a human world. Never, under any circumstances." The chamber went completely silent. Vorath's mandibles stopped clicking. His black eyes went wide. "That information," he said slowly, "is not supposed to be known outside the Hunter Councils." "I know many things that are not supposed to be known," the Empress replied. "I know that 300 cycles ago, the Cathari attempted a raid on a human colony world. I know that what happened there changed your entire species forever. I know that your hunters still whisper about it in the dark. And that young Cathari are warned never to hunt humans. Never to test the soft prey with no claws." She turned back to Marcus. "I summoned you here, human child, because I want to understand. I want to know why the galaxy's greatest hunters fear your species. I want to know what secret humanity carries that makes it so impossible to defeat." Marcus felt every eye in the chamber upon him. He felt the weight of the moment pressing down on his shoulders. This was why he had been sent. Not because he was expendable, though he was, but because someone needed to speak for humanity. Someone needed to explain. He looked at Vorath. The old hunter was staring at him with a mixture of hatred and something else. Something that might have been fear. "You want to know about humans," Marcus said. His voice was calm, steady. "You want to know why your hunters refuse to come for us. You want to know what makes us different from every other prey species in the galaxy." He reached up and touched his insignia. "Let me tell you about a man named Private Thomas," he said. "He was not special. He was not a hero from the stories. He was just a soldier. Just a human. Just one of us." Vorath made a sound deep in his throat. It was not a word, but Marcus understood it anyway. It was recognition. It was memory. "You know that name," Marcus said. "Don't you?" The old hunter did not answer, but his silence was answer enough. "Private David Thomas," Marcus continued. "Farm boy from a place called Nebraska. 20 years old. He liked bad music, and he couldn't cook. He was assigned to a colony called Meridian 4, way out on the edge of human space. Nothing special about him. Nothing remarkable at all. He paused, letting the silence stretch. "And he is the reason your species will never hunt mine again." The Empress settled back, her ancient eyes gleaming with interest. Around the chamber, delegates leaned forward. Even those who had laughed at humans moments ago were now watching with careful attention. Marcus took a breath and began to tell the story. 60 years ago, Marcus told them there was a colony on a small world called Meridian 4. It was not an important world. It had no valuable minerals, no strategic position, no great cities or ancient secrets. It was just a farming colony, far from Earth, far from help, sitting alone on the edge of human space. 300 people lived there. Farmers and their families, teachers and doctors, children who had never seen Earth except in pictures. They had come to Meridian 4 to build something new, to grow food, to raise families, to live quiet lives under an alien sun. There was supposed to be a military garrison there, 30 soldiers assigned to protect the colony from pirates and raiders. But 2 weeks before the attack, those soldiers had been reassigned to a border dispute 3 systems away. Only one Marine remained behind to help with the harvest, Private First Class David Thomas. Marcus paused in his telling. He looked around the chamber at all the alien faces watching him. The Cathari hunters, the ancient Empress, the warriors and kings and leaders of a dozen mighty empires. They were all waiting to hear what came next. David Thomas was 20 years old. Marcus continued. He had grown up on a farm in a place called Nebraska, back on Earth. He had joined the military because he wanted to see the stars. He was not particularly smart or strong or fast. He could barely pass his physical training tests. His commanding officers described him as average in every possible way. When the Cathari ships appeared in the sky above Meridian 4, Private Thomas was helping a family repair their water system. He looked up and saw the hunter vessels descending through the clouds, and he knew exactly what was about to happen. The Cathari did not come to negotiate. They did not come to trade. They came to take resources, slaves, lives. Their raids followed a simple pattern: kill anyone who resisted, capture anyone useful, leave no witnesses who might call for help. 40 hunters landed on Meridian 4 that day. 40 of the most dangerous predators in the galaxy, each one trained from birth to kill, each one carrying weapons that could tear through steel like paper. Against them stood one human soldier with a standard rifle and 3 spare magazines. Private Thomas had a choice to make. Marcus looked directly at Varth as he said this. The old hunter's scarred face was unreadable, but his 4 hands had clenched into fist. He could have hidden, Marcus said. The Cathari were focused on the main settlement. Thomas could have found a cave or a basement and waited until they left. No one would have blamed him. No one would have even known. He could have run. There was a communication beacon 3 kilometers from the colony. If he moved fast enough, he might have reached it and called for help before the hunters found him. He might have survived. He could have surrendered. The Cathari sometimes kept humans alive as slaves. It was a terrible fate, but it was still fate. Still breathing. Still existing. Private David Thomas chose none of these things. Instead, he ran toward the colony. He gathered every person he could find and brought them to the agricultural center, a large building made of reinforced metal where the colonists stored their equipment. He sealed the doors. He blocked the windows. He gave the colonists what weapons he could find and told them to stay quiet and stay down. Then he went outside and stood in front of the only entrance. The Cathari found him there an hour later. 1 human, 1 rifle, standing between 40 hunters and 300 prey. They laughed at him. Marcus could imagine the sound, that harsh clicking noise that Cathari made when they found something amusing. They offered him a chance to surrender. They told him they would make his death quick if he stepped aside. Private Thomas raised his rifle and shot the first hunter through the head. What followed, Marcus said slowly, was 19 hours of hell. The Cathari attacked in waves. They were not stupid. They knew one human could not stand against them for long. They would wear him down, exhaust him, and then kill him along with everyone he was protecting. But Private Thomas did not fall. He shot them when they came at him directly. He used the building's corners and doorways to funnel their attacks. When his rifle ran dry, he switched to his sidearm. When his sidearm ran dry, he picked up a cutting tool from the agricultural equipment and used that. The Cathari sent their best hunters against him. Warriors who had killed creatures 10 times their size. Veterans of 1,000 raids. And one by one, they fell. After 12 hours, the Cathari pulled back to regroup. They had lost 18 hunters to a single human. 18. It was impossible. It was unthinkable. And yet it had happened. They came again at dawn. This time, they were more careful, more tactical. They tried to find other ways into the building. They tried to burn Thomas out. They tried everything their centuries of hunting experience had taught them. Private Thomas held the door. When his cutting tool broke, he found a farming implement, a heavy metal shovel used for moving soil. He fought with that. The Cathari came at him hand to claw, and he broke bones and shattered mandibles and kept fighting. He was bleeding from a dozen wounds. His left arm was broken. One of his eyes was swollen shut. But he did not fall. He did not step aside. He did not let a single hunter pass him into that building. The relief fleet arrived 19 hours after the attack began. They found a battlefield around the agricultural center. 36 dead Cathari hunters lay scattered across the ground. 36 of the galaxy's deadliest predators, killed by one human with a rifle and a shovel. They found Private Thomas at the threshold of the building. He was dead. He had died sometime in the last hour, his body propped against the doorframe. The broken shovel still clutched in his hands. Behind him, 300 colonists, men, women, children, families, who had come to Meridian 4 to build a new life. Every single one of them was alive. Marcus fell silent. The chamber was completely still. No one moved. No one spoke. Even the Empress seemed frozen in place. 300 lives, Marcus said finally. One ordinary human. 19 hours. That is what Private David Thomas did with his small, fragile, prey species body. He looked at Varth. That is why your hunters will never come for us again. The old Cathari said nothing. His scarred face had changed. The contempt was gone. In its place was something Marcus had never expected to see on a hunter's face. It was grief. We call that incident the shame of Meridian, Varth said. His voice was barely above a whisper. We do not speak of it. We teach our young that some prey is not worth hunting. We tell them that the soft ones with no claws carry something inside them that we do not understand. He looked at Marcus with his black eyes. We never knew his name, the hunter said. The one who stood against us. We only knew that he would not fall. His name was David Thomas, Marcus said. And we remember him. We remember all of them. Every human who has ever stood in the doorway and refused to move. He touched his insignia again. That is what this means. The silence in the chamber stretched on. Marcus could hear his own heartbeat. He could feel the weight of thousands of eyes upon him. But he was not finished. The story of Private Thomas was only the beginning. You think his story is rare, Marcus said. You think he was special. A hero among humans. An exception to the rule of weakness. He shook his head slowly. He was not special. That is what you need to understand. David Thomas was ordinary. Average. Just another human among billions. And that is exactly why he terrifies you. The Empress moved slightly. Her 4 eyes narrowed. Explain, she said. Marcus took a step forward. He looked around the chamber, meeting the eyes of every delegate who would hold his gaze. Every species in this chamber has heroes, he said. You have your great warriors, your legendary champions, your names that echo through history. The strongest, the fastest, the smartest, the ones who stand above the rest. He paused. Humans are different. We do not wait for heroes. We do not hope that someone special will rise up and save us. We know a truth that most of the galaxy has forgotten. He pointed at the Cathari delegation. You measure strength by the power of your greatest warrior. You judge a species by its champions. He pointed at the Drathni warlords. You measure worth by victories in battle, by enemies defeated and territory conquered. He turned to face the Empress directly. You measure civilizations by their age, their technology, their ability to destroy. His voice hardened. We measure differently. We measure by how we treat our weakest, by what we sacrifice for those who cannot fight for themselves, by whether we remember the names of those who fell. He touched his insignia again. This patch shows Earth held in human hands. It means that we hold each other. When one of us falls, the rest reach out. When one of us needs help, the others come running. Not because we are ordered to, not because we expect reward, but because that is what it means to be human. The words beneath the image say we remember everyone, not just the heroes, not just the champions, everyone. Every soldier who died on a distant world, every colonist who never made it home, every child who was lost to the darkness between stars. He took another step forward. Private Thomas was not a hero because he was strong. He was a hero because he chose. He had every reason to run, to hide, to save himself. But he looked at 300 people he barely knew, and he decided their lives were worth more than his own. That choice is not rare among humans. It is not special. It is what we are. Morris spoke, his voice rough. One human cannot represent an entire species. Marcus turned to face the old hunter. You are right, he said. One human cannot. So let me tell you about more of them. Let me tell you about Maria Santos, who flew her damaged ship into a Drathni war fleet during the Battle of Proxima. Her engines were failing. Her weapons were gone. She could have ejected and surrendered. Instead, she aimed her ship at their flagship and gave the rest of her fleet time to escape. 3,000 humans lived because of her choice. Let me tell you about the colonists of New Beijing, who refused to evacuate when the Servani claimed their world. They had no weapons, no ships, no way to fight. But they linked arms and stood in front of their homes and said no. They stood there for 60 days until Earth sent help. Not one of them broke. Not one of them left. Let me tell you about Captain James Wright, who walked into a Volanti prison camp and demanded to take the place of his captured crew. He knew he would die. He knew they would torture him. But he also knew that his crew had families waiting for them at home. So he traded his life for theirs without hesitation. Marcus's voice rose, filling the chamber. We have 1 million stories like these. 1 billion. Every generation of humanity produces people who will stand in the doorway and refuse to move. It is not something we train. It is not something we force. It is who we are. He looked at the Empress. You asked why humanity cannot be conquered. This is why. You can kill our soldiers. You can burn our worlds. You can destroy everything we build. But you cannot break what makes us human, because for every one you kill, 100 more will rise to take their place. Not out of duty, not out of obedience, out of love, out of spite, out of the absolute refusal to let those we care about face the darkness alone. He spread his arms wide. You call us weak because we die easily. But we have been dying since before your species learned to walk upright. We have faced extinction 6 times on our own world. Ice ages, plagues, wars, disasters that killed nearly all of us. And every single time, we pulled ourselves back from the edge. You know what we learned from all that death? How to keep going. How to carry our fallen with us. How to turn grief into strength and loss into determination. His voice dropped to something quiet and hard. Private. Thomas did not hold that door because he thought he would win. He held it because he knew that even if he died, his death would mean something. That the people behind him would remember. That humanity would remember. And that someday, somewhere, another ordinary human would stand in another doorway and make the same choice. He looked directly at Vorath. That is what your hunters learned on Meridian 4. Not that one human was strong, but that every human could be. That the soft prey with no claws would die fighting, die protecting, die standing in the way of anyone who threatened the people they loved. He smiled. And there was nothing gentle in it. You mounted the heads of kings in your halls of victory. You broke empires and conquered worlds. You thought you understood death. He shook his head. You understood nothing. You kill because you are strong. We die because some things are worth dying for. And that difference is everything. The chamber was silent. Not a single delegate spoke. Not a single creature moved. We remember everyone, Marcus said. Every human who has ever lived and died. Every sacrifice. Every choice. Every moment when someone ordinary became something more. He touched his insignia one final time. That is what this means. That is what it means to be human. And if you ever threaten us again, you will face 8 billion people ready to hold the door. He let his hand fall to his side. Is that explanation enough for you, Empress? Cyrillith of the Volanthi looked at him for a long moment. Her ancient eyes held something new. Something that had not been there when Marcus first entered the chamber. It was not fear. It was not anger. It was recognition. She had seen something in him. Something that reminded her of powers she had faced long ago. Powers that could not be measured in weapons or warships. The power of those who simply refused to give up. No. She said softly. It is not enough. She turned to face the chamber. But it is a beginning. The chamber had changed. Marcus could feel it in the air. Something had shifted in the way the alien delegates looked at him. The contempt was gone. The amusement was gone. In its place was something harder to name. The Empress turned slowly, her gaze sweeping across the assembled representatives of a dozen mighty empires. Warriors who had conquered star systems. Leaders who had ruled for centuries. Creatures of such power that humanity seemed like dust in comparison. All of them were watching Marcus. All of them were silent. You have heard the humans speak, the Empress said. Her voice carried through the chamber like music made of thunder. You have heard the story of one soldier who stood against 40 of the galaxy's greatest hunters. You have heard why humanity cannot be broken. She paused, letting her words sink in. What say you? No one answered. The silence stretched on, heavy and thick. Marcus stood alone in the center of the chamber, waiting for whatever would come next. Then Vorath moved. The old hunter walked forward. His scarred body caught the light from the crystal walls. His black eyes were fixed on Marcus with an intensity that made the young human want to step back. But Marcus held his ground. He had come too far to show fear now. Vorath stopped 3 meters away. His forearms hung at his sides. His mandibles clicked once, twice, and then fell still. For 200 years, Vorath said, I have hunted across the stars. I have killed creatures that would make your nightmares seem like pleasant dreams. I have earned my scars in battles that lasted for days. I have never knelt before any creature. Not kings. Not emperors. Not gods. He looked at Marcus. His voice was different now. The harshness was gone, replaced by something that might have been respect. I did not understand, he continued. When we raided Meridian 4, when we lost 36 hunters to 1 human with a farming tool, I thought it was a mistake. A failure of tactics. A shame that could never be explained. He shook his head slowly. I understand now. We did not fail because of bad planning or weak warriors. We failed because we did not know what we were hunting. He took another step forward. The Cathari hunt for prey. We seek creatures that will run, that will fight, that will die when we catch them. We have never hunted something that would choose death over retreat. Something that would stand in a doorway knowing it could not win. Simply because someone else needed them to stand there. His voice dropped to a whisper that somehow filled the entire chamber. You are not prey, human. You never were. You are something we do not have a word for. Something our hunters have never faced. Slowly, with movements that seemed to cost him more than any battle wound ever had, Vorath lowered himself to one knee. A gasp ran through the chamber. A Cathari hunter kneeling. It had never happened in recorded history. It was unthinkable. Impossible. And yet Vorath's head was bowed. His eyes turned toward the floor. His body bent in an act of recognition that defied everything his species believed in. I do not kneel to your strength, Vorath said. I do not kneel because you can defeat us in battle. I kneel because you have shown me something I have searched for my entire life and never found. He looked up at Marcus. Worthiness, he said. You have shown me what it means to be worthy of remembrance. Behind him, the other Cathari hunters began to move. One by one, they walked forward. One by one, they lowered themselves to their knees. 12 of the deadliest predators in the galaxy, kneeling before a young human soldier who had never seen real combat. The chamber erupted in whispers. Delegates turned to each other in shock. The Drathani warlords exchanged confused glances. The Servani collective flickered with patterns of disbelief, but Vorath and his hunters did not rise. They remained kneeling, their heads bowed, waiting. The Empress watched all of this with ancient eyes. Then she did something that silenced every voice in the chamber. She descended from her floating throne. She walked down the steps of her platform, her feet touching the floor for the first time in centuries. She moved across the chamber with grace that made her seem to flow rather than walk. She stopped in front of Marcus. We believed, she said softly, that we invited a representative of a minor species to explain themselves before the great powers of the galaxy. She reached out and touched the insignia on his chest with one long, delicate finger. We were wrong. Her 4 eyes held his. We invited a reminder of what we have forgotten. That true power is not found in weapons or warships or the conquest of stars. It is found in those who will hold the door, in those who choose to stand when running would be easier, in those who remember the names of the fallen and carry them forward into the future. She stepped back and turned to address the chamber. Let it be known across the 12 empires that this day, the Volanthi Dominion recognizes humanity as an equal, not because they have great armies or terrible weapons, but because they have something far more dangerous. Her voice rose. They have each other, and they will never let go. Marcus stood still, his heart pounding. He thought of Admiral Chun, who had sent him here expecting him to die. He thought of Private Thomas, who had held a door for 19 hours against impossible odds. He thought of every human who had ever stood up when sitting down would have been easier. Empress, he said. His voice was steady, even though his hands were shaking. My people sent me here because they thought I was expendable, because they thought my life didn't matter. He touched his insignia. They were wrong. Every life matters. That is what this symbol means. That is what it will always mean. He looked at Vorath, still kneeling on the floor. Private Thomas held the door. Marcus said, and if you ever threaten humanity again, you will find 8 billion more just like him, ready to do the same. He smiled, and this time it reached his eyes. We remember everyone, and we never, ever stop. The chamber fell silent. And then, slowly, the Empress nodded. Then let us make sure, she said, that we give you no more names to remember. She extended her hand toward Marcus. It was a gesture of alliance, of peace, of recognition between equals. Marcus took her hand. In the cycles that followed, the Terran Remembrance Accords were signed by all 12 empires. The greatest treaty in galactic history, born from one young soldier standing in a chamber full of predators and refusing to be afraid. A canister born from one young soldier standing in a chamber full of predators and refusing to be afraid. A greatest treaty in galactic history, born from one young soldier standing in a chamber full of predators and Raphulia standing in a chamber full of predators and Raphian shown in. A statue was built in the Grand Convocation Hall. It showed a human in military uniform, holding a simple farming shovel, standing in front of a doorway. The inscription read 3 words in every known language. He held the door. And across the galaxy, hunters and emperors and ancient powers learned to respect the species that had turned its greatest weakness into its ultimate strength. They had no claws, no armor, no venom. They had something better. They had each other, and they would never, ever let go. The end.